has just been shot by unknown assailants and is currently in critical condition. Australian police have now stated that the two attackers who perpetrated the shooting at Sydney's Bondi Beach also threw homemade pipe bombs on the day of the incident, which didn't explode. A large IED was also recovered from a vehicle belonging to the accused. India and New Zealand sign landmark free trade agreement to deepen economic ties and expanding market access for exporters, backed to significantly reduce tariffs on approximately 95% of New Zealand's export to India, with over half becoming duty-free immediately. US considers punitive measures against Spain a year after the European country refused to allow ships carrying cargo bound for Israel to dock at its ports over the Gaza war. Southeast Asian foreign ministers meet in Malaysia today, seeking to end border clashes between Thailand and Cambodia that have killed at least 40 people and displaced more than 500,000 this month. A photo of US President Donald Trump that had been removed from the cache of Jeffrey Epstein files released by the Department of Justice was restored on Sunday after officials determined none of Epstein's victims were in the image, the department said. Meanwhile, Trump administration denies cover-up over redacted Epstein files. All right, viewers, let's start with the top story. Now, Thailand's foreign minister says a meeting between Thailand and Cambodia is being proposed to take place on December 24 at the border in Thailand's Chanthaburi province. The talks are aimed at working out issues between the two countries and do not involve the United States. Officials emphasize that the discussions are bilateral and focused on resolving outstanding matters peacefully. The location at the border underscores the intention to directly address territorial or administrative concerns, while both sides aim to maintain stability and cooperation in the region. I now request Rabinder Sachdeva to join me in the discussion here. He's an international affairs expert and joins us from New Delhi. Thank you, Mr. Sachdev, for joining us here at NewsX World. We appreciate you taking time out to speak to us. Would you say it's a rather welcome move for the two sides to agree to come to a table together instead of having US as the mediator?
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be with you and your viewers. Oh yes, certainly. See, any move towards efforts of peace, no violence, I think anywhere in the world is a good move in the big picture. Secondly, especially, with respect to India, I mean, this is our close neighborhood on the east. And secondly, both of these nations are, in a way, spiritual and civilizational siblings of India, be it Thailand and Cambodia. So conflict in this region is something I would say which is most unwelcome, and peace is something which is most welcome. That's one. And second, however, it seems right now, though, I mean, there are again moves between Thailand and Cambodia, or they're talking, but it seems that the positions have become a little bit more rigid over time. And, okay, of course, Trump brokered a peace accord, but the accord is not holding up. Thailand is definitely the bigger power between the two, Thailand and Cambodia, the bigger, richer, and also military power as compared to Cambodia. But the conflict which is out there, it seems is too embedded, and to some extent, I think, and it is being driven by Thailand's internal politics also. The current government in Thailand, they are in a minority status within a coalition, and elections are due in March. Now, a narrative of nationalism and taking a strong stance with respect to Cambodia is driving the political parties and also the caretaker government in Thailand right now, they do not want to appear to be looking or acting weak. That is a driver of this conflict further going along, other than the original causes, which is a territorial dispute, which essentially, if we were to look, I mean, as per international law or international case law, back in 1962, I think the international Cambodia went to the ICJ, and the disputed area belongs to Cambodia as far as the conventional wisdom goes.
But significant to note here that concerns had already been raised from Thailand that it is not open for a third-party negotiation at this point in time, and it came directly after US had apparently brokered the ceasefire that was, of course, broken the very next day. And then Trump again said that he'd like for the two sides to come back to normalcy. Now the two parties are coming together, of course, after that statement was issued by Thailand. Do you also think it has anything to do with China, given that China has significant stakes in Southeast Asia? Particularly, everybody knows it's close. Cambodia's, a communist nation, and has a direct influence from China.
Oh, certainly yes. I mean, Cambodia is very much, or let's put it the other way, that China has significant uh, engagements and relationships and influence in Cambodia. Of that, there is no doubt. But at the same time, I do feel that Cambodia is looking at or is contemplating or is trying to be not fully in China's pocket, though it really depends upon China for its investments and a multitude and plethora of other things. But at the same time, I do think that Cambodia would would explore other engagements or not being completely in the shadow of China. But the fact is that it is. Secondly, coming from Thailand saying that we will not brook any third party mediation is a bit rich, so to say the least. But yeah, sure. The point is it's become a complex issue, and Thailand also says that it's targeting the so-called scam centers in this region. In this region, we may know that there are several campuses wherein cyber scams are being, enabled or are being, produced. You could say they're campuses with hundreds or maybe thousands of people, many brought under slave-like conditions or many enticed and then held there under slave-like conditions and forced to make phone calls, forced to, meet the targets and all. And there are some casinos also in this belt which Thailand is targeting. And Thailand is also positioning it as not only a dispute with regards to the territory, which it claims, though its claims, as I said earlier, are historically, if we see, are not valid in that sense. It's the French who drew the borders back when they withdrew. Cambodia retains, and Cambodia has the legal rights to this territory. And also, the issue is that one part of the campus where the temples are is supposedly with Cambodia, but the access to that territory is with Thailand. So there's that juxtaposition between the two, which leads to complications. But for Thailand to say that it will brook no third-party mediation, fine. Let's see if they make peace. But on the other hand, the ASEAN and Malaysia are getting involved because on the one hand it's ASEAN, and secondly the peace agreement of I think 26th October it was made in the presence of Trump, of course, and also in the presence of the Malaysian Prime Minister. Both of them, Trump and the Malaysian PM, were witness to the signing of the accord. So if the accord does not hold, it shows that ASEAN is not able to keep its flock together, so to say, in a way. Though ASEAN is primarily an economic, grouping, but and also Malaysia, that they're not able to, pursue an accord which had their stamp, and of course Trump. So let's see what Trump says now.
All right. Indeed, we'll watch out for his comments. But thank you very much, Rabinder Sachdev, for joining me in this discussion. And with that, viewers, we're now going to move on to cover some news from Africa. Now, after 1 month in captivity, 130 Nigerian school children abducted in Niger State have finally been released. This is according to President Bola Tinubu's office. A spokesperson said the children were freed following a military intelligence-driven operation and are expected to arrive in the state capital, Minna, on Monday. The students were among more than 300 people kidnapped from a Catholic boarding school in Papiri village on November 21. Some managed to escape shortly after the abduction, while 100 others were freed earlier this month. 35 students and teachers are still unaccounted for, and authorities said that further details will be provided. The mass kidnapping highlights the worsening security situation in northern Nigeria, where armed gangs frequently target schools for a ransom. Tinubu has faced mounting pressure domestically and from US President Donald Trump, who criticized Nigeria for failing to protect Christians. Nigerian authorities rarely disclose rescue operations or arrests, with analysts suggesting ransoms are often paid despite official denials. All right, viewers, significant information now coming in from Nigeria, where 130 students have been released. These students, of course, were kidnapped from schools, and there has been, in fact, for the longest time, criticism on Africa that's coming in from Donald Trump, and he's time and again raised concerns about cleansing of white minority, ethnic cleansing of white minority in Africa. And in the latest, we now learn that 130 students have finally been released, of course, after mounting pressure on the Nigerian leader Tinubu. Gunmen, in fact, had also seized at least 303 school children and 12 teachers also in the Niger State. And the abductions, of course, happened after the attack at St. Mary's Catholic school in the Papiri community back in November on the 21st. 50 had escaped immediately and 100 were freed earlier this month. And an unwelcome move, another 130 victims, including the staff, have now been released. As far as the 35 unaccounted children and teachers are concerned, we only know that more details are only expected, but the remaining 130 school children who were abducted have been released, and they will now be arriving in Minna in the Niger State capital today itself. Statement is also being issued by Onanuga, who is saying that the freedom of the school children followed the military intelligence driven operation. And now joining me in this discussion is Desmond Majekondumni, who is a political activist, and he joins us from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining me in this discussion and for giving us your time. Desmond, what do you think has finally led to the success in the military operation? Finally, 130 more children have been released after almost a month of captivity.
Yeah, a tremendous amount of pressure on the incumbent government of Nigeria, because the reality of what is going on has spread out to the whole world now. And people are just astounded that this could actually be going on, that children could be kidnapped and kept in captivity for such a long period of time. And it is just so horrendous. So there's a tremendous amount of pressure. And I think finally the conscience of the decision makers is being pricked. They're realizing that you will always have consequences for your actions. This is what the fundamental law that governs the universe is all about. A law that I'm sure we're all very familiar with. We call it karma. We call it the law of retribution.
Yeah.
In the Holy Quran, they call it kifara. So lawmakers are beginning to get aware of this reality, that they must change their attitudes. That how can this possibly be going on? We're so grateful, we're so thankful that these poor children have been released. But this is just the beginning of a process that must take place.
Do you think the pressure from Donald Trump has also helped in the release of these children?
Oh, definitely. In fact, somebody was joking the other day that Donald Trump gave them a bit of a spank on the backside and that was enough to shake them up. Definitely, there's absolutely no doubt about that. Whatever his motives were, that's, another point of question. But the reality is that for, the president of the most powerful nation in the world, the United States,
Yeah.
is putting a very strong focus on that. It definitely would have had a lot to add the pressure on our people. But it's not over yet. This is just the beginning of a process that must be done, and it must be done far more effectively than has been done so far. It's not acceptable. We need to go into the causes. What is driving this type of, nonsensical, insane criminality? There's certain pressures that are going on, and these pressures need to be eased off. And instead of being eased off, they're being increased. And the reality is that if you're going to have hunger in the land, and there's a lot of hunger in this particular land that is partly being brought out by climate change. The change in the weather patterns is causing food security, and this is causing hunger. And so you're going to have foot soldiers for this type of ridiculous situation. So it's an integrated web of activity that needs to be sorted out. And, generally it's a wake-up call for us here in Nigeria, but also humanity, that we have to evolve. We can no longer be continuing to behave in this kind of dastardly way all over the world. How can we be threatening children?
Yeah.
How can we be
now,
doing
given
this
the
to
fact
children?
that the government was able to bring back these 130 children, do you think they're now better equipped to prevent such abductions and kidnappings going forward? Because, of course, the targets have been identified.
Yes, this is a very, very astute question. And what a lot of people in this area are asking is, well, what has happened to the perpetrators? Yeah, fantastic. The children have been released. But what of the kidnappers? What's happening? What's going on? Kidnapping is a very, very serious offense. And nobody has heard anything about what is happening to the kidnappers. Have they been arrested? Oh, are they being charged? Or what? There's a lot of big question marks. Whilst we're very, very, very happy about the children being released, but if ransoms were paid or an arrangement was made, then that is just going to exacerbate the problem. So the big question mark is, what has happened to the perpetrators of this dastardly crime? Where are the kidnappers?
Well, definitely. For now, thank you very much, Desmond, for joining me in this discussion and answering some of those questions. Viewers, we now move ahead. In the bulletin here, there's now some news coming in from Denmark, where we're now learning that tension has been highlighted between the United States and Denmark following the appointment of Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry as U.S. Special Envoy to Greenland. The move has been described by Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke as a sign of continued American interest in the Arctic island. Rasmussen emphasized that respect for the territorial integrity of the Kingdom of Denmark must be maintained by all parties, including the United States. The appointment follows repeated expressions of interest in Greenland by President Donald Trump, who has called the island essential to U.S. national security and has previously suggested that its independence or purchase could be considered. Greenland's Prime Minister Hans Fredrik Nielsen has firmly rejected any notion of sale, which Vice President Vance has indicated that any U.S. engagement would focus on cooperation rather than force. All right, joining me in this discussion now is Gilbert Doctorow. He's a Russian affairs expert and joins us from Brussels. Thank you very much, Gilbert, for joining me in this discussion. It's a pleasure to see you once again. How do you weigh the statements that are coming in from the U.S. After the appointment of the governor?
Well, the state of Denmark is in the news a lot these days. And it's more than the issue of Greenland. Greenland is where the friction between the United States and Denmark originated soon after Donald Trump took office. But in this time since, the relationship between the United States and Denmark has become more complicated because of geopolitics that are not in the Western Hemisphere, but are in the European part of the world. And I have in mind that Denmark, with its prime minister, has been one of the biggest opposition forces to Donald Trump's approach to the war in Ukraine. So, moreover, the position of Denmark as the custodian of Greenland has been put in jeopardy by the frank acknowledgments that have come out in the last few days about the crimes of the colonial overlord Denmark against the Inuit people, which have not yet been wholly rectified. So the situation is rather complex. The Danes are on the back foot. The Americans are advancing their ambitions with respect to Greenland in this context.
All right, do stay on with me, please, Gilbert. There's some breaking news coming in that I'd like to give our viewers. News now coming in from Bangladesh that Mohammed Muttalib Sikandar, who's a young Labour leader of the National Citizens Party or the NCP in Khulna in Bangladesh, has been shot by unknown assailants near Ghazi Medical College Hospital. Police say the attack left him in critical condition, prompting immediate medical attention. Doctors treating Sikdar have now said he is out of danger. The motive for the attack remains unclear and authorities are investigating the incident. This in fact is coming shortly after another young political figure, Osman Hadi, was shot, raising concerns about the safety of emerging leaders in the country. Mohammed Sikdar shot dead by, shot and is recovering in hospital. Shot by unknown assailants. All right, moving ahead now, viewers. A car bomb in southern Moscow has killed Lieutenant General Fanil Sarvarov, the head of the training department within Russia's general staff. The explosive device detonated under his car, which was parked on Yaseneva Street early Monday morning. Russia's investigative committee has opened a murder investigation exploring multiple lines of inquiry, including the possibility of involvement by Ukrainian intelligence services. Sarvarov's death follows a similar incident last December when another senior Russian officer, Lieutenant General Igor Kirillov, was killed by a bomb hidden on an electric scooter outside his apartment. Authorities are investigating the circumstances surrounding the attack and have not released further details about potential suspects. And I now request Gilbert Doctor to join me back in the discussion here. Gilbert, if you're aware of any more details that have come up in regard to the killing of the general, please do share with us if there's any detail about the possible attacker that has emerged.
No, I'm not aware that Russian news has given additional information. However, it is a safe bet, considering, as you have mentioned, this is not the first murder of its kind. And we know that the causality lines all go back to a certain Mr. Budanov, who is the head of military intelligence in Kiev, and who has been much more successful in waging war against Russia than his counterparts, for example, General Sirsky, with the regular army. Mr. Budanov is a star within Kiev. The question is, in looking at responsibility, the Russians cannot put a big security detail around every one of their top military officers, or even to protect their top scientists. The issue has to be, what are you going to do to liquidate the decision-making centers in Kiev that are responsible for this? And so far, Mr. Putin has done nothing. The Russians are risk-averse, but if you are a major global power, you cannot at the same time be risk-averse. Otherwise, you're inviting disaster. You can have all the weapons that are advanced and ahead of your adversaries, but if no one believes that you will use them, then you have no deterrence. That is the situation we face today, and so I say to a certain extent, Mr. Putin is responsible for this catastrophe.
Really? Because the attack is apparently being linked to the Ukrainian security forces.
Yes, I understand that. And of course, Mr. Budanov, as the head of those security forces, is the man who is behind this. However, he should have been liquidated. The office that he is responsible for should have been liquidated if Mr. Putin had any serious intent to follow through on his pledge of going after decision-making centers that he announced at the very start of this nearly 4-year-long war.
All right, for now, thank you very much, Gilbert, for joining me in this discussion. And with that, viewers, let's move on to some news from China. China's Vice Commerce Minister Li Chenggang has met with Apple's Chief Operating Officer Sabi Khan to discuss the company's business operations in the country. During the meeting, Li has emphasized that China plans to provide greater opportunities for foreign companies, including Apple. He expressed hope that Apple would continue collaborating with its Chinese partners and further develop its presence in the Chinese market. The discussion highlights China's ongoing efforts to attract and retain global businesses while reinforcing Apple's strategic importance in one of the world's largest consumer markets. Meanwhile, both sides have signaled a willingness to strengthen cooperation, which could impact investment and technology partnerships in the region. That's all we have time for. Do keep watching NewsX World.